Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center. I'm happy to have you here with us today because each and every week we work on various things that we can do to build the premier accounting firm in our area. It's where we actually focus on topics related to marketing, selling, pricing, mental health, client onboarding, client retention, and so much more. It's here we actually listen to the experts and hear what they have to say as to helping us actually focus on our business and do what we can do to get paid what we're worth. And I'm excited to have on the show today, Nikki Rausch. She happens to be someone that I'm excited to speak with because of her background. She has more than 25 years of selling experience with entrepreneurs and small business owners on helping them actually know how to sell successfully and authentically. Now, Nikki has written 3 books, all available on Amazon, and she has a podcast called Sales Maven, which you can also find on your favorite podcast platform. So, Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This conversation that I am going to have with you about sales always excites me because I think it is the pinnacle of success. Why? Because we can all be great accounting professionals, offer wonderful services, but unless we have paying customers, it's not for any good, right? It just doesn't matter. So I'm going to start with you kind of getting a background on the difference between marketing and sales as you see it, so as to help set the stage for this conversation, because I'd love my listeners to understand what that distinction is in your mind.
So, in my mind, marketing's job is to attract potential buyers, to attract leads. And sales' job is to take that lead and actually convert it to a place where we exchange dollars for services. So, I think about sales and marketing being very close related. They are good collaborators, but you can't, I don't think going out and spending a bunch of money on marketing and not having invested in learning how to sell, a lot of times now it's just wasted, revenue or wasted, money that you spent somewhere. And I hear this a lot from people of like, well, we're getting all these leads, but we're not closing them. And it's like, well, okay, then that's the issue. If the issue is I don't have any leads to close, that's a marketing problem. But if the issue is I've got leads, but they're not converting, that's a sales problem.
I love it. You're speaking my language because I agree with you. Marketing is that effort that we're actually using to find the potential customer. It's then after we've identified them, or more importantly, they've identified themselves to us, all of a sudden now we're going to go into that sales mode of nurturing them to the point of getting them as a sale. And those are 2 skill sets that oftentimes people don't have both. And what we need to do is help define, okay, where are we good and what we can do to actually do that better, but what do we need to actually improve upon? So here's my next question as it relates to then sales and marketing. As we work with professionals, oftentimes they love the product and services that they provide. They are great at what they do and offering those, but they tend to shy away from marketing and sales. How do you find it helpful to actually get them excited about these 2 things that ultimately drive the revenue and bring in the customers?
I think it comes down to a mindset shift a lot of times because you always hear it's easy to always bash the salesperson, right? Of like, sales is icky and it's kind of gross. And frankly, it's usually because you've had an experience that's felt that way, or you've been on the receiving end of somebody treating you like you're just a wallet walking around, right? Like you're not even a person. And so the way that I often reframe this for people and help kind of take that ick factor out of it is there's a misconception in that most people think selling and sales is something that you do to another person. Well, right away, when you think about the language right there of like doing something to somebody, that does feel manipulative and that feels aggressive. But I actually teach that sales is something you do with another person. It's a collaboration. It's a conversation. So when you start taking it from this like, oh, my job is I'm supposed to convince people to buy from me. Absolutely not. Your job is not to convince anybody. And frankly, especially with the way our society is nowadays, if you show up with this attitude of like, my job is to convince you, you're essentially saying to the other person, like, you already have a wrong opinion and I'm here to change your mind. Like, how many of us want people showing up right now saying like, hey, your opinions are wrong and you should change your mind? People are like, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. I'm not going to cross that line. It doesn't matter what you say or what you offer. So this idea of like, your job is to convince people, absolutely it is not. Your job is to understand, does this person have a need? Do I have a solution that meets that need? And third, and this is the thing that often gets missed too, is do I have permission to put that offer in front of them? And if those three things don't exist, you shouldn't be selling.
You're saying so much that I not only can relate to, but also say simply because of the fact that the vocabulary you're choosing to use resonates with me. One
Okay.
of the things that I think is very important is that idea of seek first to understand. No
Mhm.
one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That first part of the whole sales process is so key because it isn't that manipulative type exchange that you were describing earlier. It's a collaborative thing. And one of the things I also emphasize is it's a peer-to-peer discussion. This
Mhm.
isn't an owner of a business that has a challenge, a need, and what we're trying to do as owners of accounting firms is equally as peers help them move forward and address that challenge, that need they're facing in a way that they can feel comfortable about paying for a related service. And so I think your point of collaboration is very important. They need to see that what we're offering are options and solutions that they can embrace and hopefully ask questions about and get excited about to the point of wanting to pay for them. So I like how you've illustrated all of that. Now, one of the things that's very important here is we've got the marketing side, we've got the sales side. I do want to dive into like social media. I think that's one of the big questions a lot of people have, which is how can you speak not at people, but with them as it relates to the social media experience? How can we change that experience so that we're actually being seen as the authority, but approachable?
Okay, I love this question. Thank you for asking it.
Uh-huh.
On social media and in emails and anything that is written form nowadays, it feels like people are talking at us, right? Like everybody's
Mhm.
talking at us. And social media, it kind of makes sense because you think, oh, well, I'm supposed to be talking at people. But realistically, you can still talk with people on social media. And the way that you do this and also bring your expertise into it is you ask questions. So a lot of times we will maybe ask a question in our social media post, but it'll be buried at the bottom. But if you really want to engage a brain and a reader, you got to start with a question. And if you start with the question, now they're starting because our brains are wired for questions. We love questions. And so I think there's a term in distinctive elaboration, I believe is what it's called. Like our brains love questions and we're like Google, our brains are. If you give me a question, my brain wants to answer it, just like Google wants to give you an answer if you ask
Yeah.
it something. Doesn't mean the answer is right. It just means it's trying, right? So if you start with a question, their brain is already starting as the reader, starting to think about their answer to the question. And then they're looking for that collaboration. They want to then read your answer. So most of us talk at people. We start with like, here's my expertise and here's what you need to know. But realistically, if you start with a question and engage the brain, now they're more interested to hear your opinion or your thought around something that they now have a thought around. So we got to start with a question and then give the answer or your thought leadership around it. So for instance, with me and I'm thinking about sales and sales conversations, I would say what is the most likely question somebody wants to answer that you ask it? Now somebody's like, I don't know, in my business. Now they're thinking about it and now they're going to go like, well, what's Nikki's? Well, because I teach about questions and this is such an important piece that I can go on and now give my answer that then establishes me as the thought leader.
You
And I
know,
have
I
one other little piece around that, but I want to pause here.
Yeah, let me first of all compliment you because it's already caused me to wonder how much more I could use questions in some of the things that I'm using from my in my promotional material. If I could actually use that strategy a little bit better, it might be a little bit more engaging only because of the fact that the questions do cause an individual to pause and self-reflect. How am I going to answer that? How does that apply to me? What would I say? So I like that approach in the marketing to engage that person that's actually seeing the email, the social post, and so forth. But you have a second thing. What were you going to say next?
Well, just to kind of build off of what you're thinking too of how to use this, the
Yeah.
other thing too is that we tend to think that, and we talk on social media like everybody's watching. So we talk to everybody. But I don't know about you, but I don't sit around and scroll social media in a group. I don't get a bunch of friends together and say like, "Hey, let's all get on Instagram and scroll it together." Like I just don't do that. And most people don't, right? And so we do this thing where like, "Hey everybody," or what would you all say? Well, who's you all? Cuz you're obviously not talking to me cuz I'm just Nikki here by myself, sitting with my phone. So the other thing is make sure that you're talking to a reader, a person, a listener because we're not doing this as a group. Typically, it's a pretty like solitary thing when you're scrolling social media. So also in your emails and your promotions on your sales pages, don't talk to everybody. Talk to the person, the reader. What would you say instead of what would you all say?
I think what you're describing there is something we all experience because influencers out there have these audiences, these followers, this community that they're speaking to, and they oftentimes speak in the plural. And what you're referring to is the fact that we're having one-on-one conversations with the people that we're engaging with online. And whether it be the email or social media, let's remember to speak to them as persons, as individuals, and talk to them as that person. And if we do so, it might be more engaging because it'll feel more relevant to them in their current situation. So I appreciated that second tidbit. This is excellent advice. So as we're now moving into the communications side of things, one of the things I want to wonder or ask about is there's this relationship side of selling. A lot of times people feel like it's very sterile. It's something that isn't engaging. And at the end of the day, I think one of the things we have to recognize, especially as accounting professionals, is even though we love accounting, it's still a relationship business. It's that relationship with people at a very intimate level as it relates to their money, their finances at both a personal and business level. And we have to remember that. And so what would you say as it relates to keeping these interactions, especially in a sales experience, at a relationship level?
Well, I always think the foundation of everything that I teach, and this comes from my background in neurolinguistic programming. And if that's a new term to you as a listener, that's really the study of communication. So,
Uh-huh.
in my background in NLP, we learn that the foundation of everything is based on rapport. And so, with rapport, it's so important that you have rapport with the person. So, from a relationship selling standpoint, I think about rapport as it's like a bank account. Every single person I come into contact with, I have a rapport bank account. And my job is to make deposits. I feel like in accounting, like maybe I'm starting to speak the most basic language
Oh,
here of
yeah.
the accountant's brain, right? It's like you want deposits in that account. You want to build up a balance. That's a good thing. And the reason, just being really candid here is that because sometimes things don't always go right. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes things aren't even in our control and something happens. And those are withdrawals, right? Those are those like, that's a withdrawal, that's not a credit. And if you don't have a rapport balance built up with somebody, then you're less likely to be able to overcome that mistake or overcome that thing that's outside of your control. The accounting software that you're using, their prices go up and now you have to roll that out to your clients. You better have a rapport bank account with them so that when you do that, they're like, okay, Roger, I trust you. I know you're going to do me right here. So like, I understand. Versus the person's like, what do you mean? All of a sudden I have a conversation with you and now the pricing has changed. What's that about? And I always kind of compare this to, think about if you go to a new restaurant in your town, it just opened, and you go and you're really excited, but the service isn't great, or the food takes too long to come out, or maybe it's a little cold, or the order's wrong. You don't feel that great about going back there. But now flip that to a restaurant you've been to, 25 times, and it's a family favorite and you love the menu and you love the staff, and you go in and they make you feel like, "Oh, where have you been? Like, Roger, we're so happy you're back." And maybe that night the food comes out cold. Like, you have a rapport account, they have a balance built up with you. You're going to give them another shot. Now you keep going and it's bad. Again, these are withdrawals, right? So at some point, that balance can zero out, and then you'll be like, okay, I'm done. I'm not giving them a shot anymore. But realistically, like, we'll give people grace when there's a balance. So relationship selling to me is, are you making deposits? And especially with the kind of business that, you're doing, this like premier accounting services, these are long-term relationships. This isn't a one and done, interaction. So we have to think about, like, am I making deposits every single time that I come into contact with you? Am I thinking about, how did that conversation go for Roger? What was it like for him to interact with me? Did I do the things that were comfortable for him? Did he feel good about the conversation? Was there clarity for him? Is there anything that I can do that would improve that? And if you're not thinking in those terms, when prices do change, when the market changes, when business is in a slump and they're looking to cut expenses, you want to stick with the people who have stuck by you and that you feel comfortable with. You're more likely to like, I'm going to figure out a way to keep going with this, with my accounting firm versus starting to look for how can I find it cheaper somewhere else.
You've hit on a number of things here, but I'm going to start with the fact that I'm so appreciative of the fact that you mentioned rapport. That is the first part of this entire experience. Sales is an emotional experience. And one of the things that I think we both are emphasizing is the fact that as accounting professionals, we have to understand that we need that relationship with these potential customers for them to feel comfortable to move forward and pay for our services. We teach a 6-step sales cycle called Cut to the Chase. And the very first step is rapport. It's building that relationship of trust, being curious in them as a business owner, in their business and so forth, so as to then move comfortably through the sales process where they feel heard and appreciated. So one of the things that I want to then do is, I know you have some steps that you like to follow, some effective steps that you feel are essential for a successful sales process. What are those steps?
So I have a 5-step framework, and I call it the selling staircase. And
Uh-huh.
that is my signature framework for a successful sales conversation. And the reason I teach it as a staircase, just to give some kind of clarity around that, is most people understand that you ascend a staircase one step at a time. You don't stand at the bottom and hop right to the top, right? And if you say that to somebody you've never met before, you like take them, stand them in front of a staircase and you go like, hey, from a standing position, hop up to that top step. They're going to look at you like, I don't think so. I don't know you. I'm not comfortable with that. I might bang my shins. I might, twist an ankle. That seems dangerous. But yet a lot of times in the sales conversation, people go right from like, I meet you, now I'm pitching you. And that's like, you're skipping steps. So I teach these 5 steps so that you go one step at a time. And also, especially for people who feel a little bit like nervous around a sales conversation, it's not about always going in for the close. It's about what step am I on and what's the logical next step here. So my 5 steps of a successful sales conversation start with step 1 is introduction. The objective here is to make a powerful, positive first impression with somebody, because those impressions matter. Rapport comes into contact actually in every step. Once I've made a positive first impression, it's much easier to move to step 2, which is to create curiosity. This is the most missed step. Most of the time when I ask people, do you know how to create curiosity when you're talking about your products, your services, your offers? They look at me like, what now? What do you mean create curiosity? But if you don't create curiosity, people don't know what you have available. They don't even know yet what's possible for them in a conversation with you. And if you're the person who just shows up and word vomits all over them, you've skipped steps and that feels uncomfortable. But if you show up and pique somebody's curiosity and they're like, Roger, tell me more about that. Or what does that mean? Now we've got permission to continue on in the conversation. So once you move from step 2 to step 3 is the discovery. Now, I call it discovery because the objective here is this is where we're establishing, do they have a need? Do I have a solution? And then do I have permission to put it in front of them? So this is that consultation process. You might call it a sales call. You might call it a consult call, get to know each other call. I don't actually care what you call it. I care what you do here. And the objective here is to ask really smart questions that plant seeds in the mind of the buyer of like, oh, nobody's asked me these questions before, or you're asking me questions that's getting me thinking about, oh, I already can see that you are the person who can help me just based on the questions that you're asking. And then once you've done a well-done discovery, you've got those 3 things in place. Now we move to step 4, which is proposal. This is actually where you're laying out the offer. And frankly, this is really where the traditional selling is happening. But I've got permission now to sell to you. I'm not just moving right to it. And then step 5, which goes very closely with step 4, and step 5 is the second most missed step, is closing. Now, some people misinterpret this, that I don't actually mean this necessarily as we're now exchanging dollars for services. That's going to happen, but we've got to actually get close language out of our mouth. And I find that a lot of times people will maybe make it to step 4 and then they'll go like, well, the person's just kind of hanging out. They're not really making a decision, or they seemed really interested, but they ghosted me. Chances are you're not closing. You're not actually allowing them to make a decision in that moment because you don't ever actually ask for the business. And until you ask for the business, you don't necessarily know what lingering questions do they have, what possible objections could come up, are they ready to move forward? And maybe it's a yes and you keep talking and you do what's called selling past the close. So we have to learn to close effectively in order to figure out what is the right next thing to do to earn that business. So those are the 5 steps: introduction, curiosity, discovery, proposal, close.
I appreciate you outlining those for everyone because I'm sure they're taking notes, because I think what you're describing there is a process that they can easily follow and know where they are on that process. It's that step analogy that you were saying. Where are you? And just taking note of that experience for both them and for you. And with the introduction, I agree. You mentioned rapport earlier. It's very important that introduction be intentional and deliberate. Curiosity, I love that you're asking or having them ask questions. They're becoming curious about us and what it is we do and what's going on. They're leading the conversation, causing us to listen more, and then perhaps at the same time answer questions that are relevant to them. The discovery, that's obviously important because we want to make sure that we're getting to know them, their needs, what's going on, so that we can tailor the next thing, which is the proposal, to their situation. And then clearly the thing that you identified as perhaps the most missed is the close. And it's clearly just identifying what is the next step to move forward. Where do we go from here? And how is that going to look? Setting up that expectation. So wonderful steps. So I'm curious, what do you feel of those steps is the most difficult for business owners oftentimes to do? Where do they typically maybe struggle the most, or perhaps even choose to skip?
Well, curiosity is the first. It's the most misstep. People just don't even understand or don't even have awareness around it. And the second one of being closed. And if I can just maybe dive a little deeper into curiosity, is that all
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you think about creating curiosity, and when I teach it, this hang with me here for just a second, because you might think, who's this crazy lady on the
All right, Nikki, go
podcast
for
with
it.
me? Is I always compare creating curiosity to the difference between how you call a dog and how you call a cat. So I don't know, Roger, are you a cat or a dog lover?
I'm both, actually. I
Okay.
enjoy
Okay.
each.
All right. Well, if you think about when somebody wants to get their dog's attention, we tend to change our voice. We change our body language, our demeanor. We do these things like, oh, come here, boy. And we act really excited, right?
Uh-huh.
And dogs love that kind of energy. Like you say, oh, come here, boy. And dogs are like, I don't even know what's going to happen, but I'm so in. Like maybe I'm going to get a treat or a walk or maybe a bath. Who knows? But I'm in, right? And unfortunately, sometimes in a sales conversation, we're so excited to talk to a new prospect that we show up with what I call dog calling energy. We
Hmm.
change kind of our natural kind of way of being, our conversational style. And we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to tell you all the things I can help you with, right? And people go like, oh, they push away. It's like, that's too much. That's coming on too strong. So think about the other side here of the cat calling energy, right? Which is what I call the here kitty kitty. You want to get a cat's attention. You cannot call a cat like you call a dog. Cats will run away. But if you think about even calling a cat, we tend to change a little bit. We'll do this thing like, here kitty kitty. And the thing about cats, even if you say, here kitty kitty, they might look at you like, what? They might not even come to you, right? But all we're trying to do is pique the interest of the person we're in conversation with enough for them to decide, is this even interesting to me to continue the conversation? So there's lots of ways to create curiosity. I teach a whole course on it, but I want to give you one that you can immediately do now. And you can
Please.
start practicing. And the thing about it is creating curiosity is like building a muscle, right? So it does take a little practice, but the great thing is you can practice it all the time in every new interaction of people just to see what their response is. And I also compare this to one of my favorite posters in the dentist office that I used to go to. He had this huge poster and it said, you don't have to brush all your teeth, only the ones you want to keep. And I compare this to creating curiosity because you don't have to create curiosity with every single person you come into contact with, just the ones that you're trying to establish. Is this a potential client for me or not? Or is this a potential friend I want to know more? Like you can use this in all instances. But the simple getting started strategy here is think about how you answer really common everyday questions. Like, for instance, the how are you question. How many times a day, if you're out in the world, do you get asked this question? Like, hey, Roger, how are you? How's your day going? Right? These are really common questions. Now, most of us have kind of throwaway answers like, oh, it's
Conditioned
good.
responses. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Or like, oh, I had one time I asked somebody this and he said, I can't even tell you because you'd be jealous. And I was like, oh, I love that answer. Like, now I really want to know, right? But think about what you could say to the how are you. It's only a sentence or two response. Anything more than two sentences is you're in dog calling word vomit mode. So knock it off. But if somebody said, like, oh, Nikki, how's your week going? Instead of saying like it's going great, I could say, oh, it's pretty exciting because I've been able to tell people that the podcast just hit 300 episodes. Now that's enough of an answer for someone to go, you have a podcast? Or what does that mean? Or what's your podcast about? Maybe. Now, sometimes I might say it to somebody and they'll go like, oh, good for you. Like, what did you want in your tea? Right? Like they'll just continue on the conversation. That's okay. But the idea here is if you can create just enough curiosity for someone to go, what is that? What does that mean? Now it opens the door for you to talk a little bit about who you are, what your business is, how you serve clients. It could be even something as simple as like, oh my gosh, I just had a client share that, on her last proposal, she got $8,000 more just by one little change that we made in our coaching session. Now, somebody might be like, wait, you help people with their proposals, right? Or they might go, well, that's nice. Or how did you do that? The idea is to just give them an opportunity to lean in, to go, what's that? Tell me more.
You gave some great examples of how you can say something that's pretty, generic in the sense that it's just a statement, but it causes that curiosity to say, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. And that's one of the things that I think just in a natural conversation would be wonderful to start using, only because then it causes them to be curious as we're discussing and ask those questions to probe a little bit deeper to get the information that they might find of interest. So that was a great example. The thing I'd like to do now is transition to a topic related to pricing. I know
Okay.
that you have some ideas as it relates to high ticket items, maybe positioning product as it relates to different pricing packages. And I was just curious if you could help us understand how we could actually get more value and more revenue from the services that we're offering, just from the positioning of our price points.
Okay, well, one of the things that is super important is, and I don't know if you talk about this, Roger, with your clients, but you might. So, and if not, like there's no criticism there. It's just like this
Let's
is
do it.
something. But it's this idea of making sure that when you are talking to a potential client about ways to work with you and you're laying out your offers, that you lay it out top down. So top down selling versus most people do bottom up selling. Bottom up selling is talking about your least expensive option and then moving to the next highest price and then the next highest price from there. And the reason this is such a mistake is because you're essentially saying to somebody, in order to get more, you have to pay more. And as humans, we kind of don't like that. Like that doesn't feel very good to us. But if you'll lay your offers out in top down selling, when you say to them, there are three main ways that I work with clients. And, my top tier package includes this, this, and this. And then, the step down package, my most popular package is the, whatever the middle tier is. And then the getting started is this. Of those three, which is the best solution for you? Now, when you do that, now as humans, we understand that we have to give things up to save money. It's a different mindset shift. Now, it doesn't always mean that somebody's going to pick your top tier package, but what it does mean is they'll make a better decision on what is the right fit for them, because as humans, we don't really like to have things taken away. We don't like to give things up. And so we're willing to pay more in order to retain the things that we already have claimed as ours. So top down selling is very important. And then one other piece that I'll add to this is
Uh-huh.
this is also why when you're thinking about your offers, it is often a good idea to have an anchor offer. And an anchor offer is the offer that is your top tier, that sits at it's your premium package. And if you want to sell that as your top tier, then you need an anchor offer that sits above it. because a lot of times people will go like, well, maybe I don't need the top tier, but maybe the middle tier looks pretty good. So think about what is the thing you most want to sell? What's the thing you're the most excited to deliver? What's the thing that you know really drives huge value for your clients? That should actually be kind of your mid-tier offer. And the offer that sits above it is what's known as your anchor.
I love this, and I do talk about this quite a bit. And I think your
Okay.
explanation of exactly what this is spot on. And I'm going to just kind of add a little bit to it. First, you're pointing out the idea of not wanting to upsell someone is exactly right. That's typically used in smaller ticket items. Something that would illustrate that would be like going to McDonald's and them asking you to supersize it for a dollar more. Do you want to go up from the medium to the large? And they've tested and proven that that was phenomenally important in their sales schema, but that's not what works with high ticket items. High ticket items need exactly what you were describing. You want to paint the full picture of what it is that's possible. And then rather than trying to upsell from that, you're going to now say, and if some of those things aren't what you're looking for, this is the medium and this is the lower. It's oftentimes referred to as menu pricing. But the point that you're making as to the anchor is you're ideally hoping that the person's going to pick the middle item. The intent is they're going to say, I don't need the premium and I don't want the lesser, but with the price point and the value add, I fit really well in that middle one. And 80% of your customers typically will choose that one. You'll have a few people that are those people that feel that they should always get the best, they want the best, and they'll pay for that. And those are the rare things. But that anchor item that you're identifying as being that premier package that you don't ultimately expect people to enroll in or purchase is right, because it anchors well that second price point, and it helps them realize, it's not as much as that bigger one. And it's regularly used in real estate. If you tell a realtor that you want to buy a house for, say, $700,000, they will purposefully actually take you to a house that's maybe for 725,000. It's just right outside. And it's not because they necessarily intend to sell you that one, but they want to show you that home and then show you the next house that is 700,000 and then another home for 680. And you're like, that 680, I don't like that one. 700, I can afford it. And you know what? That other one, that'd be really nice, but I don't know that's necessary. And periodically you'll get that person that will pinch the pennies together and get the 725, but they're obviously putting 3 homes in front of you with the intent that you're going to take that 701, but it only becomes valuable once you have context. And that's what's one of the things that I think you're illustrating here. So is there anything more you'd want to add to that?
I think you nailed it. I mean, I love what you added there from the addition standpoint.
Mhm.
The idea, here's one thing I will say about the anchor offer is it's not so sometimes when I'm working with clients and we're working out their offers and specifically what their anchor offer is, the and I learned this the hard way, is whatever your anchor offer is, be sure that you're going to be excited to deliver it should somebody choose it.
Oh, yeah.
I learned that a few years ago. I added an anchor offer to something and somebody bought it right away. And I was kind of surprised. And then I had to deliver it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I should have charged like $3,000 more. And it's happened to enough of my clients where they're like, Nikki, somebody bought my anchor offer. So I always want to reaffirm, like, make sure you're going to be excited to deliver it, because somebody will pick it. Don't be
Yes,
surprised.
I agree. There's always that person that says, I'm deserving, I need,
Yeah.
and this is exactly what I want, and they're willing to pay for it. They'll make it happen. And it's the rarity. It's not the norm, but that's the idea of the pricing that you put together. But there is that person that's going to take it, and you better be excited to deliver on it and wow them with that experience. So that's an excellent point. Here's the next thing I want to go to. And I think this is something that a lot of my people may be curious about. And it's simply this. We as an accounting profession want to actually be seen by our customers as experts. We are very good at what we do and want to have that relationship where we're seen as the authority, that expert. But how do we actually increase in our marketing and sales that influence with our potential customers for them to see us in that capacity?
Well, a lot of times you can do this with questions, frankly. We forget that, I teach something around crafting what I call your expertise questions. Instead of always being the person that has to show up and be like, here's all my, background, here's all the things I've accomplished, which, might be interesting to some people, but most people are like, yeah, who cares? What can you do for me? So realistically, you want to think about before you go into this mode of like, prove yourself and feel like you have to, because I always think, especially with a sales conversation, and I think you alluded to this earlier in the conversation, that I think you were talking about this is peer to peer. And I teach that sales conversations are, there should be a balance of power.
Hmm.
You don't get to hold all the power in the conversation because, frankly, when clients feel less than, they'll go find someone else to work with. And then you don't ever want to give them all the power in the conversation or in the dynamic, in the relationship, because unfortunately, human nature is they'll abuse it and they won't value you. So there needs to be balance of power. And so instead of being the person that's like, well, here, let me prove my worth to you,
Mm-hmm.
that then puts you at a lesser than. I always say that's like you acting like I'm the monkey, I'm here to dance for you.
Okay.
No, there needs to be balance of power, but you can do this by asking questions. So instead of saying to somebody, for instance, to a client, here's all the things that most people do wrong, and here's how we fix it. That's one way to say it. But one of the things you could say instead is you could ask it as a question. Have you found that this challenge or this particular area of your business has been a struggle? Because now they're like, yeah, actually, that is something that we struggle with. And you go, great. That is something that we can then fix for you, or that's something that we work with clients and help them overcome. Now you've planted the seed, as just by asking the question allows them to go, oh, there's a reason Roger's asking me this question. Chances are he knows like what the answer could be. So because he's asked me the question, now I'm interested to know his expertise on this. What is his answer on it? And again, I know I shared the same kind of strategy, and you're like, ask the question at the beginning of your social media post, but you can do this in your conversations as well. Is you plant the questions and people go like, well, what's your answer? What are your thoughts around this? How do your clients, overcome this? What do you guys do to solve this problem? Now you can talk about it without being like, oh, I'm just the monkey here to dance and prove my worth to you.
Yep. Nikki, this is wonderful. I think these insights are so important and actually very applicable to what we're experiencing as we're having conversations with our potential customers. So this is a wonderful discussion. I do want to ask one last question before we start wrapping this up, and it's, what are you grateful for?
Well, gosh, in my business, what I'm really, really grateful for is I have a group coaching program. It's called the Sales Maven Society. And I've had it since 2017. It's been an ongoing total blessing to my business. But one of the things that has happened inside there is it's created like the people who are in there have created their own community. They've created this like culture of support and love and appreciation for each other. And I will just say that sometimes I just sit back and go like, I'm so blessed to be a part of this amazing group of people that want to support and lift each other up. And yeah, so I feel very grateful for the group. It's, I've had people who've been in there since 2017. I have people that, just started last month and everything in between. But you find very quickly that this culture inside the group is incredibly supportive, and communicative to each other. And I just feel really grateful to be a part of it, and for it to be something that it feels like it's grown outside of just me.
That is wonderful. Having a community like that can be so helpful, especially in business. So I appreciate you sharing that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start wrapping this up. One of the things I'd like to offer to the listeners is something that Nikki's providing. It's something that I would encourage you to take advantage of. She happens to have a book. It is a gift to you. It's a book called Seal the Deal: Questions That Close Sales. And you can go to the episode description and get the link there to actually take advantage of this and get this for free. So definitely take a moment and go to the episode description, click on that link, and take advantage of this opportunity. In addition to that, I want to invite you to take advantage of the Accountrepreneurs Challenge that is also there in the episode description. The Accountrepreneurs Challenge is a give back offer that we're giving from Universal Accounting Center to the accounting professionals to help you actually work both on your personal and professional development so that you can in fact build the premier accounting firm in your area. It's through this 90-day challenge that you're going to be exposed to things related to time management. You're going to be dealing with your business plan. You're going to be looking at your services that you're offering. This is both personal and professional development with an exercise on a weekly basis that's 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour each week, giving you a chance to actually step aside from the day-to-day activities you have and work on you and your business. And I encourage you to sign up for the Entrepreneurs Challenge. It's very simple. And with that sign up, you'll just get these regular emails giving you action items that you can focus on in the coming 90 days. And in fact, do what you can to make this the best year ever. Now, with that said, I'd like to just kind of recap a few of the things that we discussed today. Nikki was so kind at the beginning to actually explain her definition of marketing and sales and how they differ. And I felt she was spot on. Marketing, getting the leads, sales, that nurturing process to take them to actually doing the transaction with us. And there were so many little insightful things there. We talked about the value of rapport. And I think that is so important to understand how building that relationship with these potential customers is so important. It's filling that bucket that we can actually have of trust as we actually interact with them and have changes come up. She shared her 5-step cycle as it relates to getting sales, from the introduction to being curious and helping them become curious about our services, to discovering what their needs are and probing with those questions to then allow us to offer next the proposal of what it is we can do to meet their needs. And then lastly, offer and make that close to obviously get the sale that we're deserving of. So with those 5 steps, I thought we had a great conversation of what that might look like and how we can develop curiosity. We talked about how through questions we can lead both in our emails and social media interactions so that we can speak with and at a person so that we're able to engage with them at that individual level rather than speaking to the masses. And I thought that was a very insightful thing, to lead with questions and cause them to stop and be curious as well in that interaction. The other thing that I thought was very helpful is, as we were talking, we dove a little bit deeper into pricing and the anchoring of a product and helping us understand how to position what we ideally want the customers to purchase and how we can go about doing so effectively. And ultimately, if people do purchase that anchor item, being able to deliver it with enthusiasm and excitement so that we're actually happy to fulfill those few who actually take advantage of that anchor item. I thought all of those topics were ones that we can easily apply within our business, and I appreciate her sharing those things with us today. But lastly, as it related to being grateful, I think the point of being in a community is so important. That is something that I think I've benefited from. Just the fact that I'm not alone at the top, as so many of us are referring to being an owner of a business. That's not true when you're part of a community of other peers. That's one of the things that I think is so very helpful and important. So, Nikki, great insights. I'd like to come back to you now for a closing thought and see what it is that you'd like to leave with.
Well, one thought that I have specifically for your accounting professionals is there are clients on your roster right now who would benefit from additional services with you. But you might assume that they already know about those because you talked about it when they were first signing on, but they don't know. They've forgotten. So your job is to plant some seeds and issue that invitation. If you know that there's something else that you could be offering to a client that would benefit them in some way, do not be afraid to bring this into their awareness, and start with a question like this. I've been thinking about your business and I have an idea for you. Would you be open to hearing about it? That will open the door for that conversation to unfold naturally. And then if it makes sense, now you've got this additional service. Like I always think about increasing lifetime value of your clients. If you have things that they would benefit from, please put it in front of them. They'll be so grateful you did.
Excellent advice. I couldn't agree with you more. When we're initially involved with selling them our services, they're hearing what they want to hear, and they're going to exclude things that perhaps appear irrelevant or unnecessary in their mind at the time. To come back now after we've serviced them, they've been wowed by our services, they're happy with our services, to now later on introduce to them additional things that we're now providing, that is a great thing to do to increase that client's revenue stream with our firm, and more importantly, bring an additional value add to their relationship with us. So I like that. Wonderful advice. Thank you, Nikki. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this up now. As it relates to the show, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, I'd love to have you do so. I invite you to click on that, subscribe, set your notifications so you can get those each and every week as we come out with new episodes, as we invite experts on the show to share their insights as to what we can do to build the premier accounting firm. So subscribe now. In relation to that, I would also like to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com. You can find there in the navigation, the podcast section, where we've actually created highlights. These are playlists that we've actually put together from over 300 episodes of the ones that are best received and most liked as it relates to marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, training staff, onboarding clients, retaining clients, offering quality services, mental health, so many topics that you can dive into. And I invite you to go listen and see what those are that apply to your current situation and needs. Now, as it relates to GrowCon, this is a conference that we always talk about here on the show. It's an annual conference for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. This is something I would like to invite you to attend. It's once a year, each May, and this is a conference that you do want to be at. Why? We're going to hear from the stage, obviously, those experts that have insights as to what we can be doing to work on our business, but at the same time, have our peers there that we can meet and collaborate with, we can build friendships with. You do not want to miss this opportunity. Clearly, I'll be there, and I invite you to come say hello and also meet my staff who are committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So join us for GrowCon. If you haven't registered, get your ticket now. Go to universalaccounting.com, and in the navigation of the site, you'll find GrowCon. You can click there for the details and obviously register. Next, with regards to Universal Accounting, if you'd like more information regarding the programs that we offer and how we assist you in offering quality accounting services, as well as train your staff, becoming professional bookkeepers, professional tax preparers, profit and growth experts offering CFO and advisory services, go to universalaccountingschool.com and see what programs we have available to assist you in providing those quality accounting services and getting paid what you're worth. And with all that being said, obviously, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. Have a great day. Be safe out there. And always remember, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care. Nikki, that was awesome.
Thank you. Was that your recall, or do you have notes in front of you? Because your recall is unbelievable about all the things we talked about.
Totally from my mind. I didn't write a thing down. Here are my hands.
That was incredible. I was like, dang.
I'm listening.
I have some real respect for that. I have to say that you blew my mind with your recall. I was like, I don't feel like he's reading this. I feel like he's just recalling this. This was so good.
I'm paying attention. I'm listening. Yeah.
You really are.
You're funny because I've had people as guests, they'll actually be in the room with me and I'll do this. And they're like taken back. They're like, what did you do? Because it's an hour. This was an hour conversation, more or less. And I've had ones that have gone like an hour and a half, and I've kind of bullet pointed the conversation, and they're like, what did you just do? I don't even remember that.
Roger, the way your mind works, I am fascinated. Like, that is such a gift. It's a skill. You probably don't even realize how unbelievably like gifted you are in that way. Like, because to you, it probably seems natural, but that is not common. That is so incredible. I'm just really blown away.
It's in my head, so it is natural. So
yeah. It's that we call that in NLP. It's called your unconscious competence. It's like one of your superpowers, and it makes you really unique and special.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you noticing. So thank you.
Was
here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you go to that private chat and see that text. And when you're ready, I'm going to have you record that little promo piece.
Let me get it back up here. Okay. Okay. Do you want it to just be a one line about what we discussed, or do you want me to give like a bulleted list, or what?
Oh, you can do like I did.
Oh, I can't do what you did, but thank you.
We discussed. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Or I guess, am I ready? All right.
Yep.
So this is Nikki Rausch, and it was absolutely incredible to record with Roger an episode of the premiere. See, now I just messed it up. Sorry. Can I start over?
You can totally start over.
Thank you for that. All right. This is Nikki Rausch. It was absolutely incredible to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed everything related to sales and sales conversations. We started with the importance of building rapport. We talked about what it takes to have a successful sales conversation. We talked about pricing your offers. We talked about anchoring your offers. And we mostly talked about all the different ways that you can use questions to build your authority in the marketplace. And I invite you to listen and join us for this episode.
Perfect. Thank you.